This is the tutorial for how to create a histogram. So over here, we're going to practice with making histograms for language proficiency assessment scores. So we've got our listening scores, speaking scores, reading scores, and writing scores. And those have just come from our mock data pool spreadsheet. So these columns right here, speaking, reading, writing, and listening, which we generated from our fake student information system. And so we've just copied those columns of scores over into our practice histogram tab so that we can try making some histograms. So we want to make a separate histogram for each one of these scores. So I'm going to select the whole column for my listening scores by clicking up here in the A, and that way it selects all of the information in that column. So now that I have only my listening scores selected, I'm going to go to Insert and Chart. And Google Sheets is going to automatically select a chart type, and it doesn't often get it right. So this is not the chart that I want. So I'm going to change the chart type right here, and I'm going to go all the way down into Other to Histogram Chart. Remember, histograms and bar graphs are not the same thing. So do not click on column or bar graph when you're trying to make histograms. Bar graphs are showing things categorically, whereas histograms are showing a continuous series of numbers. And so I'm going to click histogram chart right here. And so this is going to show the frequency of the score distribution. That's why I need it to be a histogram and not a bar chart. So now that I've got my histogram chart made over here, I need to start to clean it up a little bit. So first thing I want to do is I'm going to change the title because this is not a good title for my histogram. So I'm going to double click. It can also be over here in Customize Chart and Axis Title and title text here. And then I'm just going to call this histogram or distribution of, frequency of, whatever, histogram of listening scores, and press enter. Now I have my chart title changed. I also need to change the vertical axis over here because this is a count. That's not the listening scores. So that's just I'm going to change that to be count. And so now I've got my titles and everything correct. So another thing I want to do is I want to change the bucket size because the bucket size that this selected over here, 1 to 1.7, 1.7 to 1.33, it's a very odd bucket size. So I'm going to go to Customize and Histogram, and I can change my bucket size right here. It does it auto. If you use the drop-down button, you're only going to get a limited number of options, but you can just type in the bucket size column to make the bucket size whatever you want it to be. Since we are dealing with tenths of the decimal points to the tenths places, I'm going to make a bucket size that's closer to that. I probably don't want to go all the way to the tenths because that's going to be really small. So I'm just going to do a bucket size of 0.2 so you can see how that looks. The reason why I want to do 0.2 instead of something like 0.1, for example, you can't really get as much detail. So the size of the bucket that you're going to create depends on how much detail you want to show in your histogram. For this purpose, a bucket size of 1, I can't see all of the nuances of some of those scores, so I'm going to make the bucket size a little bit smaller. So I'm going to go back to 0.2. Again, the bucket size that you choose is going to depend on how much detail you want to be showing in your histogram, but that's where you would change it. The other thing I want to do is I want to change my range on my horizontal axis. So again, it has defaulted from 1.0 to 6.5. We are a WIDA state, and so our WIDA scores range from a 1.0 to a 6.0. But you can see if students are scoring 6.0, I've got to go one higher than that, because it's going to fill those scores in the bucket between 6.0 and 6.2. So if students are scoring 6.0, it's going to fall in that bucket size. So I'm going to have to make my maximum value one size bigger than that. So again, you're going to want to change your range to be, again, whatever the data that you're trying to present, you want to match that. But where you change the range, again, you're over here in Customize, and you're going to go to Horizontal Axis, and minimum and maximum. So I'm going to change it from, I'm going to do 1.0 to 6.2, because remember, I've got to go one higher so that those students would fit in there. Because if I just did to 6.0, see, I've lost all of those students. So I have to go to 6.2.